Welcome everyone. Oh, John, now you're in focus. Now I can see you.
Right.
Welcome everyone back to the Sean Atwood channel. It is Crime Theory. It's Sunday. It's the one and only Mr. John Wedger, and we're back here for another episode. I hope everyone is doing fantastic. John, before we get into this, you've got you got to tell everybody what's happening to you before we go.
Yeah. As you can see, I'm supporting some injuries. I've got a cut in my head. I've got a cut on my forehead, and I've got a huge scar. An open wound. I was bitten in the face by a border collie. So
I'm sorry, I keep laughing. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's not funny. I'm so sorry.
Well, I mean, the thing was distressed, and I thought I'd be a bit of a dog whisperer and try and negotiate on the dog's level, and the dog was that frightened. I'm not a dog whisperer, I found out.
Nah.
And border collies are intelligent as well. It probably sussed me out, and thought I'm not being psychoanalyzed by that guy, and just
I reckon
bite my face.
Yeah, I reckon he's probably a bad dog, right? It was, like I say to John, it was probably a PDF dog, and he knew what John was up to, and he was like, right, this is our opportunity to take him out. Because a border collie, right? Like that must be the first border collie attack in the history of the world, because you just didn't hear, but
do you know the irony of it? The day before, I was in a meeting with who was once deemed one of the most dangerous men in the UK, a guy called Stephen French, aka the Devil, in the day. So I came back from there, a positive meeting and a nice Chinese meal. So no damage there. So if anyone thinks this is anything to do with Stephen French, it's not. I was bit in the face by a placid border collie.
Yeah, and well, you never know. Maybe it was an elaborate ruse by one of Stephen French's old rivals, and this is a pack of border collies just running around looking to take out Stephen French's enemies. But big shout out as well to Mr. French. He is a legend, and his story.
If I may say, he's embarked on a mission. I can't remember the name of the charity, but he's doing some brilliant work up there. Fantastic. So if I could remember the charity, I would give them a huge shout out what they're doing. But yeah, brilliant what he's doing.
Yeah. Do you want to see some brilliant work that I did? Right.
Go.
Look at the guy. Look at the guy.
Wee man.
Little update on the world of Nova here for everyone.
Oh, look at that. That's fantastic.
Wait till you see this one, man. Look at this one. When was the last time any of us were that serene, right?
Yeah.
Like what moment have you ever had where you were that relaxed? Because I can't figure it out. So anyway, big shout out.
Well, you're truly blessed.
Yeah, she's
really
awesome.
Blessed. What a beautiful, beautiful angelic child.
Yeah. So listen, John, your name has been in my side chat since the DNA result headline hit about Julia. Then the arrest about Julia hit the headlines. Everyone is wanting to hear your thoughts. Now, obviously, we've got to be very careful how we word certain things. Yeah. We're doing that. But just let's go back to the original headline of the 69.23% result. And when all that kicked off, did you see any of that? Or was it just life just running too fast for you to
Yeah, I was made aware of what happened to her. I mean, I've always made it clear my stance on the child in question, and that she is not the child in question. I've always sort of made that clear, in my opinion. And the last conversation I had with her, when I think she had just returned from the house in question where she doorstepped someone, and I did give her a stern warning, be very, very careful. These are highly litigious people and very well connected, and be careful of your course of conduct. And then the next thing, I've been made aware, and I've seen because it's all over the media that she's not only arrested, and I got a message of someone actually saying that she'll be bailed out, and I went, she won't be bailed out. She can't be bailed out, and there's a reason for that, because she's a foreign national with no permanence in the United Kingdom. So she's deemed what they call a flight risk, and the person of no fixed address. So, and what she's been arrested for could carry a 10-year sentence. So this could well be a Crown Court issue. And there's also public protection concerns here. So it's undoubted that she will be, unless she's got a bailable, verifiable address in the United Kingdom that the prosecution are happy with, she will be remanded in custody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's possibly glimmers of hope maybe on that being resolved. Hopefully we'll have updates in the next few days on it. But I imagine you're taking this from very much from how things are right now. You're looking at the facts that you have right now, and as the facts are right now, you're exactly right. There is no fixed address.
Yeah, and we've got to look at Julia herself. I did put a question to her because I doubted her claims, and I made it clear. It's no reflection on her as a person. She's a very likable, intelligent, and sweet person. So this isn't in a character assassination on her. But I did ask her straight up, are you the victim of child abuse? And she did confirm that. Incestuous abuse. So, along with that, you're going to have mental health issues. And there's certain conditions that sort of can be synonymous with that. Things like bipolar, schizophrenia, delusional disorder. And what we find also with people that have got a thing called DID, they can offset one of their alters into someone else, because that will explain and give them solace inside that if they are someone else, then they can detach themselves from the onus being that of their own real family, when it should have been lovely, caring and nurturing, and it wasn't. But if you can offset it and say, well, if I'm this person, come from a different parentage, then that would explain it. So I think in her mitigation, there may well be some mental health things that could be not only mitigation, it might also be a lawful defense, because what people tell you they are, and what really they are, and what they've got in the background, in the closet, or on their medical records, are two different things. And I've spent long enough with survivors of abuse to know that what they tell you is sometimes a very small percentage of what the case really is.
Do you know, let's expand on that a little bit more, John. I think everyone in the world's guilty of having what they project publicly and what they have as themselves. And, John's breaking down of an analogy of what happens to a lot of survivors, right? And we're just going to talk through that, and then we will circle back to the whole DNA thing, because, the side chat saying, regardless of mental health or anything like that, this alleged DNA result, which we will get to, everyone, don't worry. John.
And I can. There's something that I should have said from the start when she was pursuing the DNA issue.
Yep.
And that's if.
Wait, you've gone quiet, John.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, mate.
Yeah, sorry. Sometimes I turn up. Now you share your DNA with your parents 50-50, although the majority of your genes, your genetics, come from your mother, and that's because the egg has got more prominence than the sperm has. So you're going to take on board more from your mum, but your DNA is split half and half. Right. So if we look at it this way, if I say that Sean Connery is my father.
Yep.
All right. And I want to get a strand of Sean Connery's hair. Sean Connery said, no effing way. John Wedger, you're crazy. No way. It's not happening. Well, what is wrong in me getting a DNA strand from my own biological, so-called, or whatever, father's hair?
Correct.
So what Julia could have done, if there was a doubt, and there is a doubt, whether or not this said person is her mother. Well, what about the supposedly true mother getting the DNA from her? And if there is a 50% match, then that line of inquiry is finished and it's closed. And the likelihood of her getting her own mother's hair, even if it's outright asking, or it's by deception, going around there and taking the hairbrush. When we deal with missing persons, murdered persons, and the like, when we do family liaison inquiries, we go around and we seize toothbrushes, we seize hairbrushes, because it's got what's called retrievable DNA from it. So she could have done that, and that would have been a line of inquiry that, as an investigator, I'll look at. You don't always have to look at what you haven't got. Look at what you have got,
Okay,
and
sure.
what she has got is recourse to her own mother's DNA, a so-called mother's DNA, but that doesn't seem to have been pursued. So maybe an inference can be drawn there as to what the real truth is.
Yeah, it's a very complicated situation, I think, for a lot of people, because I've worked very closely with Julia since we all came together on Sean's channel, and I've lost absolute interest in the very sad story of the little girl at the center of all this, who, massive question mark as to what happened to her. It's all about Julia for me, John, right? And it's about the truth. You know what I mean? And do you not think that if you were Julia's mum or dad, and the Daily Mail published something about DNA being 69%, that one of her parents isn't her parents, would you not just take a spite test at that point? Do you not think that DNA result of, and again, I'm not a DNA expert, John, and I know you're probably not either. We are going to bring on some experts this week, and if you'd like to be part of that, let me know, because we just want to get some answers on, if you have a natural conception, how the DNA breaks down, if you have other kinds of conceptions, or if it's just getting all the variables. Do you know what I mean? Because it could be massive, it could be nothing. We could be looking at something that we're all just not educated enough to really understand. But for me, it seems to be a big number, right? And I'm not going to pretend to know what that really means. So you don't feel pressure to do the same. But were you taken aback by that? Were you sort of...
I've not fully looked into the stats on it, but however, her own supposed biological mother and father would put an end to it then and there. And if it wasn't 50-50, then of course it's got to come from somewhere else. But I would start off with the probables. It's like when you're doing an investigation, start with a reasonable before you look at the unreasonable. But it doesn't look like the reasonable has been checked out as yet. But I mean, the thing is, what we got to look at now is, what is our position?
Okay.
Now, where do we stand now? Now, from what I've heard, it's 4 cases of harassment. But someone also has said it's stalking.
Stalking and harassment.
Yeah. Now, stalking is harassment, but it's an aggravated form of harassment. So definitively, stalking is unwanted behavior carried out by obsessive or fixated individuals whose actions disrupt the victim's lives, and it has to cause the usual things on a public order stuff: alarm, distress, but with stalking, it's all fear of violence. So we have stalking carries 10-year sentence. The aggravated with the fear of violence carries 14 years. And the courts can deal with it in the usual ways of she can be found not guilty. She can be found culpable, but by reasons of diminished responsibility and everything else, that she is actually not guilty. So she uses what they call a lawful defence. Or the court find in her favour. But also, what can be issued is what's called an SPO, a stalking prevention order. So the court can issue that. And so when we look at stalking and harassment, there's got to be an obsession with a person. It's got to be repeated. It's got to be a course of conduct, as we say legally, and it's got to be unwanted behaviour. Now, when she did attend the venue of a certain woman, a certain parent, was she wanted there? Well, no, she wasn't. Then we got to legally argue, was Julia's behaviour obsessive or fixated? Okay, and did it cause the victim of this, this mother, alarm, distress, or fear of violence? Well, from what Julia said herself, there did seem to be some sort of alarm and distress, because there was tears shed and stuff like that. Fear of violence, I very much doubt it. I don't think the aggravated form of stalking exists here. So I think the 14-year one will be ruled out. But when we look in her favour, only 6% of reported cases actually go to court. Only 6%, and out of all the reported cases of stalking, only 1.4% result in a conviction. So the favours are pretty, that is pretty much in our favour. But that'll be down to the police doing their job and how much evidence they have. So when she attended the first time, was that a course of conduct? No, it wasn't. It was a start maybe of a course of conduct, and her flying out from Poland to Bristol, and I'm just assuming that's what happened because I've had no communication with her.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think it was directly from Poland. Yeah, I think you're right in that.
Yeah. So was she going out there to continue a course of conduct? If that's the case, how did the police know? So there could have been some monitoring of social media. And when we look at stalking itself, legally it can be split into 4 categories. So we can have surveillance. So you can surveil someone. And that can be done electronically. So with the stuff that she has done on social media, which is quite extensive, and the stuff that, we've all sort of been connected with, whether directly or indirectly with her, will that be used in her evidence against her? It may well be. And it may well be that the police have in some way monitored this show, Sean's show, stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So it's always, and I did recall saying to her, one of them, just be careful, because it's not that you get caught straight away. If things get reported, the police do a collation process, so that they'll be collating evidence. What I find concerning here is did they know? Did they have information? Did someone inform the police? Is there an informant working here? Is a co-defendant? Who is this person? Why did the police pull her up at the airport? Because if they did, that means I would think the course of conduct was already legally complete. So there may well have been more than one instance regarding this family, which is caused by Julia, which is called alarm, distress, or fear of violence. But we won't know that until the actual defence statement is put out there. But we have another thing called life invasion.
Okay.
Now that could be loitering or unwanted presence outside someone's house. I think legally you can pretty much tick that box if we was to look at what we know so far. I don't want to bolster up the case for the prosecution at all, but I'm just looking at factually what has gone on. I think her presence.
Do you think, though, if we look at how many times Julia has effectively been outside a property, it's maybe on 2 occasions, right?
Yeah, and I think legally you could argue that would constitute a course of conduct. So out of the 4 points, 2 may have been ticked here. So the surveillance thing, and then we've got intimidation. I think you could argue that one in Julia's favour, because I don't think in any way, from what Julia has publicly proclaimed, that her behaviour was in any way intimidatory, and I don't think it was ever meant
Yeah.
to be that way at all. And fourthly, it's interference through sabotage or attack. Well, you can write that one straight off. That you know, there is no way. So out of the 4 pointers, there's 2 possibly that the prosecution could be looking at. Her phone will be seized. That will be subject to some sort of interrogation. And then, you know, let's look at harassment, the actual act. And it comes from the Protection of Harassment Act that came out in 1997. And you've got to make a victim feel distressed, humiliated, threatened, or fear of violence, right? So the victim here will have to provide evidence. And if that evidence then goes before a court, there's every chance that victim will be called and challenged. So she may well end up having to go to court and you know, rely on the so-called facts she's put in a statement, that she felt distressed, she felt humiliated, she felt threatened, or in fear of violence, or all combination of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they want to do that or not, I'm really not sure. And then with every offence, so the police at the very start of it, really. So someone reports it because they believe that an offence has been committed, and then the police turn up, or it's reported, and then they go through what they've got. And if they think they've got enough, they can either, you know, proactively go out and pick the person up. They can circulate them as wanted, or they can just invite them in to come and have a chat. What makes me feel that there was a course of conduct in the police's eyes was that Julia was picked up at the airport. For me, as an investigator, that would tell me that she had what they call a JBOC, which is a Joint Borders something or other. It's an acronym for a multi-agency circulation. So that'll be with Special Branch, the Borders Agency, the police, Customs and Excise. She would have been flagged up. That would have been put to all travel companies, immigration departments. So they pretty much would have had her on a plane, knew she was on there, knew her seat number, and picked her up. I would have thought they would have picked her up actually on the plane. So they would have boarded the plane as it landed. Everyone remained on there, and the police turn up and drag her out from her seat. And then they'll have to interview her and ask her what her stance is. Now, she can only be expected to answer to evidence that's been put to her. If evidence isn't put to her, it is not her case to bolster the prosecution's case and fill in gaps. That's not her job. And a good solicitor will step in and say, in the absence of evidence, you're going to say no comment. And that may be the case. But then ordinarily, you'd bail someone pending inquiries. More information, more questions need to be put before the person. So a second interview may well should. But it looks like they charged her. That is what I'm looking at. She's been remanded. So in order to charge, you need to prove the case. So with this indictment, you're looking at a course of conduct. So must have been more than one occasion. There has to have been harassment. So that harassment, like we mentioned earlier, coming alarm, distress, or threat of violence, or whatever it might have been. That'll be down to the victim to relay that to the police, how they felt and what happened, and the police will then see if that interprets harassment, and that would then have to be ratified by a CPS lawyer. But the suspect had to have known, or should have known, that their conduct would cause harassment. Okay, so that would really be down to the test that they put of a reasonable person. Would a reasonable person have known that this behaviour would have caused harassment? If Julia is a person of sound reasoning, then that point will probably be proven. But if she has got underlying mental health problems, they might not be able to prove that point. And then we got to look at the intent. What was Julia's intent? So we've got two parts that need to be satisfied for law. We've got the actus rea and the mens rea, a little bit of Latin for you. So one of them, the actus rea, is the actual physical component to offending. So it's like assault, it would be the actual punch in the face, right? But the mens rea is the intention. Now, you could punch someone in the face because their face is on fire. You know, if I'm going to be facetious about this with a little bit of satire chucked in, you know, and it might be that is the offence of assault complete. No, it's not, because my intention was never to hurt that person by punching them in the face. Actually, my defence was lawful and not criminal. So that's that. So the police will have to look, and they will do that by the evidence, and they will maybe rely on Julia's admission or denial to come to a conclusion on whether the intent would be legally satisfied. But even if it is, there are still lawful defences, right? And in order to prove stalking, right, there are defences, and one of them, you can stalk someone if you're going to prevent a crime. Okay, you can follow someone to prevent a crime. What do store detectives do? They stalk someone. What do these pedo hunters do? PDF file hunters do? They electronically stalk someone because they're going to prevent a crime. So you can do that. And then we've got to look at things like mental illness. You know, has she got a mental illness? Has Julia got schizophrenia? We don't know. She's not disclosed it. We've got no access to her medical record here. Has she got delusional disorder? Out of all of them, I think that would be the more probable if there is a mental illness going on here. Is she bipolar? Is she a substance abuser? You know, which would cause bizarre stuff like that. Now, the last one might not be a defence, but it's definitely a mitigation. So with the courts and that, it is like a tennis court. It's about batting it back. You've got an argument, you whack it back. They satisfy that argument and they chuck another one back. So when cases get thrown out or they're upheld, it's not always down to the fact that everyone's a Freemason, the Illuminati, the judges, an SRA perpetrator. Blah, blah, blah. It's because these points aren't satisfied, you know. So we need to satisfy all these points, and if the prosecution can't do it, then beyond all reasonable doubt, the defendant must be let off. But her biggest problem at the moment, I would be bail, securing bail, and whether or not this case remains with the magistrate. It obviously couldn't have been remedied with a caution. So the fact that she's not received a caution will probably indicate that the severity of it. It might also indicate that she's going not guilty. So you can't give a caution to anyone who's, you know, or it might be it's got to go to the court because they'll be looking at getting a stalking protection order slapped on her as well. So, and if that happens, then the surveillance thing will kick in, and she probably won't be able to podcast, put stuff online. That will put an end to it.
Yeah. Well, look, before we go any further, I just want to, there's a few people who are who are just a little bit triggered by a couple of things. And I just want to step in and just say a few things for John, right? John, for many years, has worked with survivors of some of the worst forms of ritualistic abuse. And during his long time doing this, he has encountered individuals who, through a systematic process and this horrific ritualistic abuse, right? Horrors, shall we say. He has witnessed a lot of DID. He has witnessed how it is used to fragment these individuals' minds to create discredit within a survivor in the eyes of the world. This man has stood and fought for survivors' rights for years. Were you not recently at a rally, John, where people were saying that ritualistic abuse does not exist? And
Well, I actually attended a presentation stroke conference by one of the UK's most senior journalists, as someone who has a doctorate in journalism, and actually teaches an esteemed university on journalism. And, you know, that was her thing. That was her stance that this SRA does not exist. And she had an hour-long presentation. 20 minutes of it was given over to attacking Donald Trump and the right-wing movement in Donald Trump. 20 minutes discrediting survivors of SRA in the UK, and another 20 minutes attacking me. So it's not unusual. Look, you know, the fact that I'm not 100% saying, you know, that Julia's innocent, Julia should be released and all that. No, listen, we're reasonable people,
this is
and you have to be reasonable.
I
And
agree, John.
when you're in the legal profession, which I was for years, you have to do that. And it's not saying I'm against her at all. I like the girl, and I've stated that, and I've clearly stated she's a nice, likable girl, and I wish her all the luck. But it doesn't mean she is what she claims she is. You know, that will be for her to prove, and in the absence of evidence, you can't prove it. But there are things she could have done to bolster up, you know, that she hasn't taken what I class as reasonable steps. And again, it's not a denigration of her, but then we're looking at the rarities of the legal system and where she stands in it. And of course, if it doesn't fall in alignment with her and someone takes umbrage with that, well, you know, you're obviously not a reasonable individual and can't make a reasonable assessment of a reasonable conversation. So I can't get to you. I'm sorry, you know.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It was always going to be a very interesting take when we got John Wedger's take on this, because a lot of this week's programming have been from people like me. I had a very triggered show a few days ago, John. You know what I'm saying? Where I think it was the morning after she was arrested, or it was when she was getting remanded. It was very much reason why, if you know the person and you're a detective or whatever, you don't get assigned the case, right? Because you're too close to the material, right?
Well, it's again that the family in question. I've never been a fan of them, and I've openly on many big media outlets, you know, just short of mainstream media, you know, given my opinion on the family and state that I believe they should be doing time. So it's not me siding with them, but you know, things are the way they are. It's like if one of your children commits an offence, I mean, to stand and say they're innocent when they've done it, you know, would be wrong. It's overprotective, and that in itself displays a form of narcissism where you see the children as an extension of yourself and therefore see no wrongdoing in them. And it's a personality trait disorder when you get that sort of triggered parenting, you know, and it's absolute cognitive distortion and an unwillingness to accept the facts. And that is because there is a failing on a cognitive process there.
I'm with you. I mean, I understand. And it's, you know, everything that you're saying is, I mean, you're spot on. If we all look at this under a microscope, people are capable of having their public life and their private life. And I would love to think that everybody that I know is honest and upfront with me and all the rest. John likes to keep things into perspective, so don't be thinking that John's here as much for the truth as everyone else, and I think we can both agree with that, right?
I'd like to say something. So many years ago, I'm in the process of just finishing off my book, and there's a chapter on it. I had a role within the police for a couple of years for domestic parenting reasons. I needed to be home early, and I was asked to teach interview and interrogation skills to detectives, and it turned out it was quite an elite posting, and we ended up teaching detectives and wannabe detectives of all ranks from all around the world. You know, they came from the Caribbean, the Middle East, the Far East. It was quite an impressive job. And part of how I would run the course was at the end of it, because it was so intense, we would go for a pint. And there was a one of the sergeants was jealous because I used to get 95 to 100% positive feedback on my courses, and that hadn't been achieved for about 10 years. And this particular sergeant, a woman who was a woman who liked other women, and leave it at that, she was so upset and jealous, she decided to get one of her girly mates on my course and report all the wrongdoings, you know, which were many, many, right? But one of them was that I took my students drinking in work time on the last day of the course. So I get caught up on a discipline, quite a serious discipline, for drinking on duty.
Yeah.
And I have to sit before a discipline panel with two very senior officers and an inspector who's adjudicating, and the evidence is read out. And the evidence is read out that on day, date, time, place, you did take your students whilst on duty and in work time to the pub to consume alcohol.
Right.
And I said, no, that's not true. And of course, they all kicked into gear. Well, we're going to call witnesses, and we're going to. I said, no. I didn't go once. I actually went twice. I went on the Friday, and on the Wednesday it was someone's birthday. We went then, right? And they were like, "Are you sure you want?" I said, "Yeah, I went twice. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not going to lie to you." I said, "Listen, do what you want with me. That's fine. I've given you what you need, but don't you dare adjudicate me if you've never drunk on duty."
Yeah.
And there was a senior officer there. He was, I think he was a commander, and he just burst out laughing. He just burst out laughing. He threw his pen down, and because he knew I was right, I suppose, I don't know. And he just said, "Will you take a bollocking?" I went, "Of course I will." He went, "Right, you've been bollocked, F off." And that was it. But I could have lost my job. But and I just thought, no, don't come in with me when you've all done it.
Yeah.
You know, and not white and white sit there and deny I would never drink. You know, the whole police force is built on alcohol. You know, so
I'm with you.
Know, so to sit there and point the finger at people. No, of course I'm not going to do that. I'm not white and white. And but what we got to look at is the facts. The fact it's like speeding in the car. We all do it, and every now and then we get caught. And when we get caught, you got to take it. You know, take your mustard. And we got to look at her. Is she guilty? We don't know, and in no way do I want to upset the judicial process and make it a detriment, because I'm on her side. I don't think she is who she claims to be, but that's just my personal opinion based on the things that I know or believe I know, and that's that. It doesn't mean that in any way she's a liar or in any way that she's mad. She's not because she. And like we many conversations we've had on your show, she's a very likable person, and how she was treated in that big operation, I think, was wrong. They should have given her a lot more attention than they did, instead of just fobbing her off. So,
okay, well, let's look at it from this point of view then. If let's and again, let's just work on this the theory that this could have been handled better by Operation Grange. They had her DNA. She came over here. 60. In fact, you know what? Let's say they get a fancy DNA test and it takes twice as long. 200 quid, John. Call it 200 quid. Let's go crazy, right? Taxis there and back and everything, right? It just seems like they could have really helped Julia's entire existence years ago by ruling out or giving evidence, whatever. How about the truth? How about that?
And that was something that we made it apparently clear when we were interviewing her or whatever on this show, and I'm 100% with you on that. I think that is what they should have done in the spirit of fairness. They should have done that, and they didn't.
Yeah, and again, just to reiterate to everyone, Julia paid for her own flight to come over to the UK to give her DNA over to Operation Grange. She was then received a phone call, which has been made public from Operation Grange, where she was informed that she is not who she claims to be, but they have not and will not be testing her DNA. And I mean, paraphrasing, metaphorically speaking, that's like flying over, being given hope, having your DNA taken, and as soon as you leave, it's thrown in the bin. And if that isn't going to just put more fuel in the fire of someone like Julia, right? If that isn't just going to send her more and more on the detective for answers, like I think that would send us all further wanting answers, because that's a bit odd.
But
And
the other thing is, I don't know whether after her first visit to this family home, whether she ever received a warning.
That's right. Well, here's an interesting thing, right? So listen, let me play this story out for you, and then give me the John Wedger ex Bobby breakdown, okay? Because one of the occasions that she came to the UK where a recording took place of an interaction between a family, right?
Yeah.
Where you heard some verbal altercations, right? She, on that trip, before she done any sort of visitations with that people, went to a police station and asked to be, if there was any reason she should be arrested, based off of what Operation Grange had said if she ever came back. Now, if there was all these counts of harassment and things like this, if they'd been reported prior to that, would there not have been an arrest warrant for any of the prior, crimes, if you will?
Well, not only that, they've got her details. They could have rung her up, couldn't they? I mean, how they work things now is that, even with suspects, they don't drag them in like they used to. They bring them up, and then they invite them in to attend an interview. So why couldn't they have done that?
Again, we're not speculating, right? But why is every single time we talk about Julia, whether it's her medication as a child, the doctors, how things are handled by Operation Grange, the DNA, new DNA results, the parents doing nothing in, from the Poland side, why is all of it stink? Why is no one?
I think with the family involved, it's stunk from the start. I mean, there's nothing different there. It's
correct.
There's just been question mark after question mark, and how this has even been allowed to go on for the length it has is just. I mean, we mentioned it before on the show, and I think I gave the stats of the average amount of money spent on the missing child. It's something like 1.7 thousand, and the average time spent, I think something like 48 hours. It's a minuscule, maybe 4 hours. I'm not too sure now. Not got the stats, but it's low. It's very, very low. Whereas this went on for 11 years, or maybe more, at the cost of millions and millions and millions.
Let me ask you a question, John. If we remove the most famous missing girl in the world from this equation, right? Would there ever have been any arrests made?
Well, that's the thing.
If this was just a girl wanting to know who her dad was, say, right? And let's say, for example, I don't know, allegedly somebody had seen every single message sent from one person to the other, and every single message was, please, I would just like some answers. I'm begging you. Non-threatening, if you do this, if you don't do this, I'll do that. If it was all just a girl wanting answers and the most famous missing girl was not involved in this, do you think the police would still handle it this way?
I very much doubt it. I think everything that they've dealt with regarding this family has been questionable. The motives, the overzealousness on certain things, and then the reluctance to pursue other stuff has been odd, and it's been backwards at times, and just the length of time it's gone on. When we have gone on and looked at cases of missing kids, like Brian McDermott was the one that always sticks in my mind.
Yeah, man.
How that was covered up, and it was cited initially as an SRA case, and then the British government got involved. One guy that poked his nose into it ended up getting stitched up with 10 years for a murder he never committed. It was the weirdest thing going. And we went on about Leslie Mulseed and the cover-ups around there, and the one in Coatbridge, Moira Anderson, and it goes on and on and on and on. All people, the police ever done with them has come up with the most ridiculous. I think it was the Leslie Mulseed, it might have been Moira, when she went missing in the middle of winter. I said, "Oh, she's probably got on a bus and gone to London to look at the lights." Both were like hundreds of miles away. I mean, the most ridiculous comment to come out with. So we see now weird and perverted some of the police's decisions are, and you see a lot of them with this family as well. And for me, it just think we're covering something up. That's my opinion. There's something stinks here. There doesn't seem to be the sort of what do they call it? The holy three: openness, honesty, and transparency that the police always go on about. There doesn't seem to be any of that in the inquiry. So, she could be up against the beast here, but we don't know. You only wait and see when disclosure is made, and we've got to be careful that we don't in any way harm her case. That's the one thing we've got to be very, very careful of, and I would implore anyone viewing this or listening to this to do the same. Whilst it's in the judicial process, any interference of that is contemptible, and you're going to get nicked. I'll be very, very careful.
Yeah. Apologies, I completely froze and dropped out of the chat there for a couple of minutes, John. So I didn't hear your last comment, but I'm going to jump over to some questions and things from the audience. And some of them are fairly straightforward standard. So, do you think Julie will get DNA test now she's being held in prison? So I don't know if that means
no. Her DNA will be taken. It would have been taken, and it will remain on the system, and so that will be tested against the DNA database, but not in respect of any missing kids or anything like that. No. But her DNA profile will now be on the British system. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hang on. Do you know the lady Fia that was involved with Julia at the start of Julia's journey?
Fia.
Yeah, I don't know if you know about Fia. A couple of questions, but I think you really knew Julia after the 2023 chapter of her journey. I know, sadly, Julia's pets are now with new homes. I can confirm that. I'm going through the questions, and the reason that I'm not reading most of them out is because I can't ask John these questions. We need to be better. We need to word things better, people. We've got to be careful how we're wording things. I don't think there's anything the Polish embassy can do, Jojo.
Well, they may well have been informed. I mean, it is protocol that when a foreign national is arrested and charged, that their embassy is informed. Whether that goes on, I'm not sure. However, the Polish were quite unique in as much as they were very, very proactive and pro-British justice. So whenever one of the Poles was arrested, I mean, this was going back to early 2000s and that when they joined, that agreement, that open borders agreement came in. Even if a Pole was in trouble for parking fines, they wanted to be told, and that they would extradite anyone back to their country for the most minor of offences. So the Polish, out of all the countries that had this unilateral agreement, were the most effective and the most proactive in extraditing their people or authorising their people to be extradited back to the country and face justice back there. So I think that the Polish authorities will probably get involved with her now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What about is there a DNA database for missing children and persons in the UK and Europe? If so, why hasn't Julia's DNA been tested for that?
Well, I mean, again, if they're missing, how do you take their DNA? Unless they've been arrested and they're on the DNA database, then they go missing. Then there will be a DNA profile. But you know, unless everyone is DNA'd at birth, which will be a civil rights matter, then no. I mean,
so
this is a balance you've got. It's a bit like chipping a dog. You know, years ago, you didn't have to chip a dog.
That's a terrible but really well put analogy, right? 100%. Listen, I agree, right? If it wasn't for the evildoers that run the world, John, us all having, you know, all our passport and a chip in our hand and all this brilliant idea, it's just the evildoers that would mistreat it all that's the problem, right? So are we a bit misled by movies, John, right? Because when you see a movie and someone goes missing, you see that scene where they're walking around the bedroom picking up a hairbrush or something like that. Is that not a common occurrence in a missing child?
It depends. I mean, this is a tragedy also. When I was speaking out and I was highlighting the child trafficking, child prostitution, as we called it back then, one of the common things that these kids had, two common things, that firstly, they were all subject to care orders. So they mainly were kids that were in care homes or from dysfunctional homes that all local authorities were monitoring. And secondly, was that they were missing persons, but the police didn't care, and the kids returned, so they weren't missing for long, so there was no need to debrief or deal with them. But an abducted child, so if a child is abducted, then that it is fast time. Then it's quite an impressive protocol that they have, in which they all connect with the borders agencies. They start pinging mobile telephones. You know, they do real time, fast time analysis and triangulation and stuff like that, and AMPR. And this is what we found with the case of Wilfred Wong when he was involved in the abduction stroke kidnap of that kid, in which he got the hefty 17-year prison sentence. We saw real time, fast time proactivity of tracking a kid down. So when they want to do it, they can do it, and it is impressive. You know, and then also they can get the sniffer dogs in, and then they can, you know, pick up a scent and get the dogs, you know, following the trail where the kid last was.
That's something I wanted to get a little refresher on you from, John. What was in the missing child's case? There was a sniffer dog report, right? And I can't remember if it was they found something, then it was dismissed, or they found something that couldn't have happened. What was it that happened with the sniffer dog?
Well, the dog picked up a scent, and it's picked up a dead body scent, and that was bolstered up by the fact they picked the same scent up on the toy and also in the car that they've been using. Okay. So you know, and bear in mind that dog, the FBI went and classed it as one of the best sniffer dogs in the world.
Yeah, we done a whole show on this, John, and you went into the whole science behind it. Now, how likely, and this is just, please feel free to take the mickey out of me because of the stupidity of this question, right? How likely is 3 false hits from a cadaver dog?
Well, it's highly unlikely.
They're
usually
they're just trained for cadavers and all those things associated with
well, they do have dual purpose dogs, but they can't lie. You know, they can't lie, and that's it. They're indicators, so they're a very credible indicator. I mean, I found them fantastic. I would use these sniffer dogs, firearms and drugs ones, near enough every single case I went on, and they were brilliant. I mean, there's one dog that can sniff out money.
John, do you know the most recent one I've seen is the AI abuse material hard drive and mobile phone sniffer dogs.
Yes,
right?
I heard of that. Yeah,
Dude, like the training course, all the big like the pipes that all at different angles, the big concrete
yeah,
circles, and they go and hide something, and it's always like they're so happy to do their job, man.
yeah.
Like, see, if we could all be as happy as a sniffer dog sniffing for something, we'd have a great day, right? Everyone would have a great day.
They were
Yeah,
brilliant. They were
yeah.
brilliant, and they always, you know,
Oh,
delivered.
here's this is where my mind was going with this. Can a cadaver scent be transferred if a teddy was to fall on the floor where someone had passed away previously, like another person, for example? Now, John, don't think about the mathematics of the likelihood, right? Would it be possible? And here's another question. If I was to stand in like a dead something, like a rabbit, brought in roadkill on my shoe.
Yeah, no, and I'll tell you for why. Because there's a thing called collagen. So they're trained. There's only two animals that are almost identical uh, in cadaver stuff: is pigs and human beings. They're almost identical in scent. So the cadaver dogs are trained on sort of rotting, and it's to do with rotting as well. Because when the body dies, the heart stops, and then the blood coagulates, and bacteria is then released, which then starts to break your body down, and that's what they're trying to pick up on. So human beings and pigs, if you was to do with pigs maybe, but anything else, no.
Okay.
So whether or not they can pick up the scent of different bodies, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. You'd have to speak to a dog handler on that one. But
and again, we're not talking about the mathematical probabilities, right? Because the mathematical improbabilities of, something the week before happening in that hotel room that resulted in another unaliving that no one knows about, and then it just so happening that room was used with Maddie, and it's another. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's very, 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 very unlikely.
Well, let's look at another way, right? So, drug detection dogs will give what they call a knock, an indicator, and it usually is sitting down next to someone or something that contained or has contained drugs. So they will give a knock if they've detected drugs, but you won't know whether that drug is cannabis, heroin, crack, or whatever. It will just sit down. So that will be down to the officer then to search for what drug it is.
Now here's an interesting one, right? And I'm going to slightly reword Alex's question. Just it's safer to reword it, right? So if John thinks the little girl in question is no longer alive, right? How does he explain everything Julie has shown us? Now, John, don't answer this. None of us. I am here. The channel is here. Sean is here, and John is here to get the truth for Julia. Okay. For me, the little girl, the missing girl in question, it's a tragic, horrific story. And I'm here to get Julia answers. And there is a truth here somewhere. And John is the reality check that most of us, when we're very close and we're passionate about stuff, passively, selectively remember information that it helps the narrative we want, and we sometimes sort of forget key points that, whether you want to admit it or not, exist in this case. And I think that question's one that is hard to answer because I think.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I base my opinion on what I've seen, what I've read, work that's been done, the media, the alternative media, and my experience. And also, I did have some information from an insider on there who sort of made it quite clear who was responsible. And then you got forensic experts such as statement analysis that have got an extremely high probability rating. And again, of course, they weren't there, and it's open to an argument, but they're pretty much absolute. You've got the dogs, what they had, You've got, the whole bizarreness with these weird statements and the weird claims that those present had made. So that's what I'm putting on. I'm pretty certain in my own mind, that little lassie is gone and never to come back. I weren't there. I don't know. And again, I made it clear to Julia what my opinion is.
Correct.
And it is an opinion. I'm not God. I don't know. But it doesn't mean that I can't entertain it. Just because I don't believe what she's saying, it doesn't mean I can't entertain it and look at the merits of it.
Yeah.
Because, your mind's like a parachute. It only works when it's open. And a detective's mindset should be to go towards claims and also go away from it. So to go towards your target and information that also takes you away from it.
Yeah.
And when you get people that just go towards a target and won't entertain anything that takes it away, this is when we have Travis's of justice like Rachel Nicole, the Rachel Nicole murder, where you've got people like Colin Stagg stitched up for a murder he didn't commit, whereas the guy who did commit, Robert Napper, actually claimed to the police earlier that he actually admitted committing it. But the people are so entrenched in it that it is Colin Stagg and no one else. And you've got this arrogant tunnel vision. And of course, it wasn't him, So, but it doesn't mean that I can't look into the merits of what she's saying or give her some assistance in trying to get the truth out there. And whether that's the forensic truth or one word against the other or whatever it might be, but will it gain the burden of proof, which is beyond all reasonable doubt? I don't know. And again, there's other things that need to be taken into account. You've got to take into account people's bad character. You've got to take into account their history, their medical history, their mental health history. And, we don't go around with our doctor's notes stapled to our head, do we?
I need to reiterate, just, John, we freaking love you here, man, right? And, it doesn't change I just want everyone to understand. I'm still so here for the truth. We're all here for the truth for Julia. Just in case anyone thinks that, John's opinions or anything like that are designed to sway anyone's mind or anything like that. It's not at all. It's just John has reminded us of the reality and the facts of all of this. And we can all look inside ourselves and know we wear who we are publicly, and then there is who we are privately. We would all love to be able to put our hands up and say, oh, I wholeheartedly know this X, Y, and Z about anyone involved in this case, but none of us do. And it's wise, like a parachute, like John always says, to keep your mind open. And that goes for John with his beliefs, but keeping his mind open for the new possibilities, evidence, and things that come forward. And it's the same with the rest of us. And we all love Julia a bit, and we want to see her free as soon as possible.
Look, I've got a very good friend of mine, and he'd experienced abuse as a young child, and he decided to take some sort of, I don't know, retribution, whatever it might have been, against the perpetrator. Right? And it's an ongoing thing, so I'm not going to discuss it. I'm not going to narrow it down any more than that. And we sat down and went through his case, and there were things he did that were understandable. I might not have agreed with it, but legally they were wrong. And I had to tell him that. And he sort of took it well, but didn't. And then you have to say, well, look, the old saying is don't shoot the messenger. In order to sort of help you, we, like a solicitor, we need to know exactly what you've done and what you haven't done.
Yeah.
See, solicitors, what they say to people is, you've got to tell me what you've done, and they look at the evidence against them. And if the person is going to lie, deliberately lie, that solicitor has to say, I'm professionally embarrassed and stand down, right? And that means that their client has said, look, I've lied to you, and I'm going to go to court and I'm going to lie to the court. and the solicitor under their code of conduct cannot represent a person. So sometimes it's better that the solicitor, and on many occasions, does not know the truth. And they will word and manufacture their questions around their client, so actually they don't get the truth. And what they will say is, well, maybe this is a scenario. And they will actually give them a scenario which prevents their client from having to lie to them. You know, did you do it because of this? And bring up a lawful defense. Well, that probably is nowhere near the truth. But the moment that their client tells them the truth, they can't represent them. So they'll go, yeah, oh, yeah, that was it. And then they'll manufacture a story around that lawful defense, which will potentially get that person off. But if it was about the truth, right, it would be a different story. But the legal system is based on proof, not truth. Proof, not truth. Whether people like it or not, it ain't John Wedger's rules. That's the rules. You either prove your case or you don't. The courts don't want to hear emotion, and they're not interested in the truth either. They just want the proof.
Yeah. And I just want to say to everyone, John and I have been working together a long time. We share a lot of the same views on certain people and activities and nastiness in the world. I don't know if we agree fully on this, right? But look, we're grown people who have a slightly different of opinion, but still carry on working together in the world. How crazy is that, John? Right? That people can respect each other's opinions, right? And carry on, right? It is. So just in case anyone's worried, right? You know, I just need it. We need.
Well, look.
We need takes like John's. We really do.
If I was right, I was an investigator, right? So I'd get someone in front of me, and they're accused of something. So I would look at what is that offence? What are they built? You know, the parts to that offence, right? So when we look at stalking, well, what is stalking? We've got to look at what it is. It is unwanted behaviour carried out by obsessive or fixated individuals whose actions disrupt the victim's lives, right? We've got to look at that. We've got to look at the points to prove for it, right? What are the points to prove? We've got to prove that the suspect knew or should have known that their actions caused harassment. And then we've got to look at what is harassment. Harassment, alarm, distress, fear of violence, right? And then we've got lawful defences, right? You know, that, like we said, it could be that you were stalking someone or whatever to prevent a crime. And then there's a few others. Then we've got to look at mitigation and excuses, things like mental health, things like schizophrenia, delusional disorder. But we've got to look at that. And in the same way, a defence team will be looking at exactly, they will say, well, look at what the police have to prove. Have they proved this element? If they haven't, we win. You know, and it's a game, it's a battlefield, it's adversarial. You know, but just because someone doesn't like it doesn't mean that it don't happen. You know, so just because someone gets the ump and says, oh, yeah, well, you should be on our side. It's not about that. If you take that attitude, you're going to lose. You've got to fight back, and you've got to look at what have we got. And it'll have to come down to a point where have our defence team got enough to see this through and win it? If not, can they fight it and at least bring some strong mitigation in? And there will be disclosed material, withheld material due to its sensitivity that we don't know about. But the police will have to know about it, and the defence will have to know about it, right? Both about the victim and about the suspects. And if there is withheld information that can assist Julia, they have to give it to Julia's defence team, right? So if it assists her or it undermines the case for the prosecution, so it either assists the defence or undermines the case for the prosecution, right? And that's something the victim and her family have got that they need to tell the police about. If they don't do it, Julia wins. And that's that. And I think there will be a whole raft of sensitive material that they want to withhold.
Hang
And
on a
if they
minute, George,
want
hang on a
to,
second, hang on a second. Let me just get the massive allegedly banner scrolling. Carry on.
and then they have to hold what's called a PII trial, public interest immunity. So they will have to then go to court and say to the judge, right, we need you to be aware that there is this very, very sensitive information that cannot ever get out. And it's up to the judge then to just decide whether or not it's lawful to continue the trial in the absence of this sensitive material.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
that's either way, that could go either way.
Interesting. Honestly, that's why we love you, John. You are a plethora of knowledge. And I put up a wee post at the side there. This week I am going to be speaking. My focus is to try and get some answers from what's been in the press. I think from a your friend's been arrested and you don't want to screw up the case too much. Investigate what's been printed as a
look, whatever's open source, we can go with.
yeah.
You know, but I would tell people, you know, no protests outside prisons
Yeah.
and all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff, because
Yeah.
that's not going to help anyone, and it definitely won't help Julia. It really won't help her.
Yeah. No, I agree. Also, as well, and this, no one's asked me to say this, but the other day I was really triggered and done a live stream, and I was a bit fishy. I mean, I'm very sarcastic anyway, but yeah, I maybe took things a little far. So I just want to say I'm going to be focused on delivering things a little less emotionally this week, which I think is a little bit of retrospective self-awareness, shall we say. I'm still going to be ranting. Don't worry. It's just what I'm going to be ranting about is in the papers. So
I mean, the other thing we got to look at is that from coming on this show, I know there was a few people that were against Julia coming on here, and they think that there might have been an element of exploitation of a vulnerable person. I sort of get that, but on the whole, she's been incredibly well received, and there's been a lot of support for her.
John, she teaches kids. Does she not teach like teenagers and young adults? Like, I'm sorry, this scary, mentally health-ridden woman from Poland that apparently is such a massive, publicly known, like, threat to the world, who people drop their children off to. Is again, there's that whole thing that I've got to
the other thing we got to look at is if this goes to what they call committal, Crown Court, you know, trial. I mean, I don't think the family involved, many people like them. I mean, I don't know. I'm coming at it from my angle. I certainly don't like them.
Well, here's John, how about this?
People will side with them.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Right. Here's another thing. Right. So let's assume, and I'm not a criticism, but let's assume a certain family may have learned a certain thing about public opinion and how important it is to a case. What a great opportunity to be the heroes of the world by giving this girl the answers. And I think you're going to have a percentage of the UK who are like, I don't believe what she's saying, but can we just get this done now to shut her up, please? Then we're going to have the 20 million spent, and you can't do £200 to get this poor girl the answers. We're going to have them, right? But you're going to have this percentage that if the McCanns step up and done this heroic gesture, right, it would massively. I don't see why they wouldn't, because at this point they would look like heroes. It would be an incredible thing for the public, and it would show that. And to be honest, do you want to know my real theory, John? I think it would be a great service to all of those people who were taken and who are now living out in the world and who want answers. I think that there should be, but again, I understand anyone could just rock up and be like, "Give me your DNA," and it can cause a whole bunch of problems. But
I mean, years ago, the East End of London, you know, you got a lot of theft cases come out of there, right? Because of what it was, you know, thieves' kitchen, and the Crown Court that served the East End was Snaresbrook Crown Court in Leighton, sort of Stratfordy way. can't remember exactly. And it was Snaresbrook. It's in Snaresbrook, it's between Stratford and Leighton and the East End. So, and the catchment area for the Crown Court were local people. A lot of them were migrated East Enders. So when you've got East End culture of thieving in an East End court with East End jurors adjudicating over a thief, there's something like a 95% acquittal rate, right? However, Snaresbrook Crown Court, so if you was up on a theft or a handling charge at Snaresbrook, you were going to walk free, and that was how it was. But if you was a PDF file, they had the highest conviction rate in the country. You were just, regardless of the evidence, they're like, no, they're guilty.
Also,
they're guilty.
I'm pretty sure I said tutor, not teacher. I said tutor, right? I'm pretty sure I said tutor. I meant tutor. If I did say teacher, I think I said she's a tutor and she teaches. I think that's what I said. I don't think I ever said she was a teacher. But to my knowledge, let me rephrase that. To my knowledge, allegedly, Julia is a tutor. And the very basis of a tutor would be to teach, but not as a teacher, as a tutor. That's my understanding of what Julia does.
And also the publicity that it could potentially ramp up is just amazing. It could be huge. And does the family really want? I don't know. But I'm just looking at all the variables here. So there may be a need to keep this low key and deal with this at the magistrate's court level. So there could be an inducement given to her to keep this, put your hands up and you're walking out with a community service order. But
do you think, Mr. Wedger, we will see any similarities in the suspicious silencing of a certain incident that took place in Dunblane years ago applied to this case?
I do.
Talk a little bit about what that is, if you can, mate.
So, and this is what I said earlier about the disclosure, the sensitive, non-sensitive material.
Right. Okay.
It will be massive. And of course, the Dunblane thing. We had Abdul Megrahi was classed as the Lockerbie bomber, who's now dead. And at the time, I was doing a lot with the prison system, recruiting informants and things like that. And I dealt a lot with the Scottish prison system. I was regularly going up to various prisons up there, up the road, as we say, and talking to people. And I was speaking to some of the Muslim inmates. It was either Greenock or Stockton. I can't remember which one it was now. I think it might have been Stockton.
I think it was.
And one of them said he said, I said, how does he was in here? He said, do you know they've got the Lockerbie bomber in here? And I went, how does he get on in here? Is he not getting beaten up and all that? He went, no. They keep him totally separate from everyone else. And wherever he goes, he's handcuffed by two prison guards and all that. He said, but he gets his time in the mosque. And of course, this Muslim guy said, I've got to know him. He said, he's a really nice guy. And he said, he does for the government what I do for you, meaning give evidence. He said he never did it, Johnny, and everyone in this prison knows he's innocent and he never did it. Everyone, and he said, and he's been working, giving evidence to the government over things, whether it's terrorism, I don't know, but that was what was said to me, and of course, the narrative never changed when he died. That died with him. So, but there's loads of. I mean, the one that really comes to mind is Colin Wallace, who they classed him as a man who knew too much, and he was the one who the intelligence officer for the Army Intelligence Corps in Northern Ireland, high-ranked military intelligence officer in the army, who spoke out about all the missing children from Kincora Kids Home, and he stressed people need to look into the murder of Brian McDermott, something that we did a lot of work on, and we had information that we shared on this show, which I did share with the RUC, now the Northern Ireland NIPS or whatever, I can't remember, and I shared it with them, and I also shared it with their leading media agency are past everything that we had disclosed on the show over to them, as would the likes of Roger Cook would have done. And he said that this is a ritualistic killing, and there's something very, very fishy about these boys and politicians, both Protestant and Catholic, and this kid's own. And of course, they didn't want that coming out, so they just banged him up. We hear it all the time.
If you're one of the many people who could listen to John talking all evening, we have got a long playlist of crime theories. Our first series, we dive into. It was how good was our first series? Like how fun? I mean, it's horrific stuff, but we were like.
But it seemed to have spurred a whole genre of crime programs on YouTube. Since we did, there was always a couple out there anyway, but since we did it, and there were cases that no one really delved into that we did, you know, such as Leslie Mulsey, such as Brian McDermott.
To put it in perspective, I literally have a document that's all of our cases with the metaphorical red detective string that ties to them all and everything like this. And it was that first series was what reset my whole investigative juices flowing again. It was just unreal. Now, I just want to say something. So, right. So, I will just say this. I'm here for the truth for Julia, okay? And the truth for Julia could go to the people who support or are against her original theory. But for me, that's a win either way for Julia, because that's the truth, right? So I'm telling you now, you know, if you don't know me, anyone that would ever, if I ever got scammed, or if this was like, if there was diaries found where like, oh, I can't believe how much nonsense I fed Mr. Swanson and he's believed me. Do you know how over the top I will be about discussing how I got scammed? Like, but it doesn't take away from the fact that I'm only here for the truth for Julia. That's why I'm involved, because originally this was, you know, a great sort of insight into a case that took the world by storm. But then when you start realizing that when you meet Julia, all the stuff originally printed about her is just the most over the top, radicalized way you could ever describe someone. And this journey from that day forward has always been about getting her the truth and being a bit like, this has gone a bit far, is it not? And regardless of what the truth is, whenever that day comes, I'll still be friends with Julia. And I'll still be there for Julia, because, you know, that's just what you do. And if it was about proving, if Ron had a narrative he wanted to prove, right, he would be then angry if Julia turned out to, if it didn't go the way that Julia says it was. But that's not how it's going to be. If that is the case, it might not be. It might be something even worse. It might be something very simple. Who knows? But that's the truth. And I just need to make sure that is what you all understand my involvement in this is about. Okay. And like I said to John earlier, man, remove the most famous missing girl case in the world from this, and this ain't even hitting the courts until she's done. I mean, how many?
Let me
ask you this: how many women have you spoke to about stories or heard stories about how difficult it is to get rid of a pesky ex? Or
this is exactly what I was just going to say.
Okay.
You know, I just dealt with one woman, and her husband was ex-husband. He was violent, beating her up. She got divorced from him. He would turn up, keep spitting at her, turn up at her house, shout at her. She reported it time after time to the police. And with that, there was a threat and a fear of violence, which would have pushed into the 14-year category. They did F all.
Yep.
You know, nothing. And you hear time and time again other cases of the same. You're absolutely smack on with that. And it was just what I was thinking. Yeah. So, you know, this is one of the things. If they are going to overzealously pursue this girl for something which really words of advice would have sufficed, you know, then why are they doing this? And then remanding and then this. It just seems maybe it's bullying. I don't know. Have they got the right to do it? Well, yeah, but it's overzealous when other cases, which probably are more or worthy, well, meritorious of that sort of heavy-handedness, they're not doing it. They're just not doing it. I mean, you've got to look at the case of Wilfred Wong, his first offence.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
whatever we think about what he did, he got 17 years with a recommended Home Office thing of doing, 11 and a half years.
Yeah.
Never been in trouble before, which other people, when you look at other comparative cases, they get a couple of years. So
yeah. We need to do some checking and see if the time has come for a big proper full length on that, John. But we'll touch base.
They've
I've got
given
my
him a horrific sentence, but again, I think once you go against the narrative, when you go against the establishment, might be a bit of a conspiracy thing going on with me. But if they've got you, you're going to get the fallback.
Dude, it's. Do you know what? We'll save that. We'll save that one because, like I say, our first interactions, I think, were me asking you about that and me putting all my notes together, and it's been a while. And I think there's something I'm thinking of doing, and it might be the perfect thing for that new project. So we'll talk behind the scenes on that. And again, if you just tuned in or you've missed the first half of the show, we're just here talking about the facts and what's been in the papers with Julia, the charges, her being remanded. John's given his insight as an ex-member of the British Police, and it's been insightful this evening. A lot of things that, like I say, it is about the truth and justice for Julia. I don't know D-Day. I don't know about on that one. Very probably. But we need to all remember, right? There's a reason why you don't investigate people that you know if you're a policeman and things like this, because your brain subconsciously would rather focus on some of the investigation than other parts of the investigation because your emotions want your narrative to be clear. And sometimes we can all fall victim of this. For example, here's an example. If you had two people in front of you and one was your father and one was a stranger and they were both being accused of something, you're naturally going to be like, well, I'm going to side with my dad. You see, it's that impulse. And I think for a lot of us, we need to keep the statement that is on the screen just now by C. Sanderson. Truth for Julia, justice for Julia. That is what we need to have in our head, right? Try and separate that from the most famous case in the world, because at this point, it has to be about getting this girl her answers for less than £200, for what it could do, not only for certain families' public image, but for Julia. And that goes to the parents of Julia out in Germany and Poland. There's so much that you could do to help by just putting this to rest. And that's all I'm saying, really. Really. I think a lot of us feel that way. I think a lot of us do. And this week, I'll be putting up the webpage that I said I was going to do with all of the information for people who want to be able to email or do whatever, get up to date with bits and bobs. It'll also have all of the things that have been set up with people we know, or at least that I know, are real people in Julia's life. It's not someone that's popped up since this has happened and said, oh, we're doing this, blah, blah, blah. So that'll all be coming this week too. Lisana, I think you're probably right. I think there's so much split trust with the British establishment right now, especially we're still licking our wounds after the horrific incident that took place at that dance studio, the fallout of all of that, the madness that's ensued, this two-tiered system that people are seeing shining through. Very interesting reporting of things in the mainstream media and selective stories and all this kind of stuff. And I just feel like this is the time for us to get answers. But the the trust is, I think, gone for a lot of people, John. Don't you think? Do you think?
Yeah, I think that the mainstream media has had their day. That the public don't rely on, especially the BBC. Their narrative was years ago. It was gospel, and that's gone now. So the distrust for the establishment is massive, and social media seems to be dictating politics. So uh, let's hope that carries on. Yeah, it's been a huge poll shift because we can compare it now with what's happening in America. And that's causing a lot of despondency over here that they're moving forward and we're not. So
they're getting plastic straws back, mate. All right, that's all I know. Okay,
yeah,
all the things that Trump steins, the one that stuck out in my mind was plastic straws, baby. Last night or the night before, sorry, I think I went through like 9 paper straws in the house, right? And listen, I don't know what happened to me. I met Dan and she drank everything through a straw, and I'm like, that's a way better way of drinking everything, right? It's just way better, right? Like, do you never have these like intrusive thoughts that when you're drinking, you're going to sneeze and glass yourself in the face? Like,
well, there's always that theory if you drank alcohol through a straw that it concentrated it and got you drunk quicker, wasn't there?
Listen,
listen, do
you know what gets you drunk quicker? On our first ever date, Dan, we were out in East Kilbride, and there's these drinks, John, called Venoms, right? And it's just a big cock. They taste amazing, but it's just all alcohol. Like, it's just the mixer is like a WKD and a splash of pineapple, and they're great, but they come in pints, right? So all night, I don't understand how I'm getting so steaming and Dan's absolutely fine because she's just topping my glass up all night from her glass, right? All night. And it was a great night. But I don't know why I'm saying. Oh, paper straws, right? So yeah, that was the story of the Venoms and the paper straws. But look, we're I think we've covered good ground.
Well, 90. So something like no, it's not. As 89% of the US public do not believe the official narrative of the John F. Kennedy killing.
Yeah,
they don't believe it. So that just goes to show that people have woke up to a lot.
A lot of 100%. And I'll tell you something else. People in the side chat, anyone who wants to tell me metal straws, wooden straws, all this stuff, listen, I'll you make me a plastic straw, right, that I can just wash, and I'll do that, no problem. Not a silicone one, not one that tastes like a no, none of that. Nah, I don't know why I'm talking about straws.
Well, there was a thing in America that in the McDonald's they used to have the little spoons for coffee. It was an elongated arm with a tiny little spoon, and they replaced it with stirrers because the spoon was in the exact measurement of cocaine, and it was because of that they.
We've got to say white, John. We've got to say white. We've got to say white. We're doing so well. How have we managed to get to the end of this? And the one time we say a bad word is when we're talking about McDonald's.
Yeah.
Like, do you not understand the irony of that? So well, listen, John, thanks for being here. Thanks for keeping it real as always. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we're going to try and touch base for my Friday show. I want to really get an in-depth report from you on a lot of the ritualistic stuff for the new audience that's here. And I just want to say, for everyone who has been asking, who was here, not here earlier, John got into a confrontation with a border collie. He tried to use his his dog whisperer. I just, bit my
face off.
Honestly, if we'd run a poll on what happened to John's eye, no one. There would have been several bitten by a dog, but we would have had to ask for breeds, John. No one's.
I know. So this wasn't a bull thing. This wasn't a, banned breed at all. This was it was cleverer than me. It outwitted me and bit my face. But,
let's go, man.
Yeah, don't ever stare at a collie.
Yeah, don't stare at a collie. Well, listen, make sure you guys are subscribed. I'll be back tomorrow with a daily show around about 1 o'clock UK time. And hopefully I'll have some answers for when we'll be putting on some shows with some more experts. And we'll dive into getting us some more answers on the stuff that we're not experts on. Because I think that's the best thing to do right now. I might change my mind and we may do something else. but we're still, oh my god, I've just dropped my internet, my Wi-Fi, there we go. But we will be continuing to support Julia, and I just want to say thank you to everyone that's on the Discord, the community that's forming, whether it's you're there for Julia or you're there for the movement that stands against children being used as a commodity all around the world. You can see the symbol up here. If you want to be part of something like that, go to ProjectROOQ.com. That's project spelled normally, and ROOQ, ROOQ.com. Be part of it all, and we'll see you there. John, thank you, sir. Thank you once again. Thank you for being the legend you are. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to the side chat. Thank you to the Atwood family. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you all. Thank you.
Time for tea.
Time for tea. Hurrah.